Good evening, folks, and a hearty welcome to our drive-in theater.
When people talk about some of the greatest movies ever made, a lot of the films brought up tend to feel a little samey. They'll bring up Citizen Kane, Vertigo, The Godfather, or anything made by Stanley Kubrick. Hell, I remember one college professor joking about how every film student dorm room isn't complete without a Pulp Fiction poster. That's not to say that none of these films are worth any praise. Hell, 2001: A Space Odyssey is in my top 3 movies. What I'm trying to say is that every once in a while you'll come across a movie that seems so obscure to the masses, and so rare and scarce in its availability, and yet everyone who has seen the film claimed to be one of the best of its kind. Sátántangó is one of those films. This was a film that I had an interest in watching for the longest time, but I just could not find this thing anywhere for the life of me. For the longest time, the only available version of this film was a Region 2 DVD copy on Amazon, so I couldn't even watch this movie because of region locking. It wasn't until recently that this film was released on Blu-ray, and before that I had to watch it on Vimeo. I literally had to hunt this thing down like the Holy Grail just to watch it for the first time. I think a big reason as to why this movie is so rare is because of its runtime. This monster of a film clocks in at, I shit you not, 7 hours and 30 damn minutes. Yeah. This movie is rarely ever screened at movie theaters because of how much an event it is just to watch it in one sitting. And I can only imagine the hell film restorationists have to go through just to restore this movie to a higher definition. Filmmaker Béla Tarr wanted this film to be seen all in one sitting with no breaks in between. But his colleagues were just like, no. I don't think you realize just how uncomfortable movie theater seats get after 7 hours. You need at least like 2 intermissions for this thing. It took me 3 days just to watch this movie in its entirety, and honestly, it was totally worth it for the most part. This is one of the most expertly crafted films that I've seen in a very, very long time. If you're a big fan of impressive long shots, then this movie is basically porn for you. The average number of shots in a movie is around 1,250. This 7.5 hour film only has 150 shots, and none of them feel wasted. The movie has a very unique method of telling its story. Yes, it does have a plot. Yes, it does have characters, but the entire film moves at an almost glacial pace. There is a 3-act structure, but Act 1 alone clocks in at 2.5 hours. It forces you to put aside any conventional means of storytelling in film and to ask yourself questions about what you're being shown. You may look at the scenery and think to yourself, why is this world so dirty and run down and empty and barren, filled with garbage flowing in the wind like tumbleweeds in a western? Why are these people lacking the same luxuries as first world people? As more characters are introduced, you start to wonder how a world like this would affect those who lack survival traits. Like, how the hell does a fat old drunkard even survive in this village when he can barely even take care of himself in his own home? The fact that this guy is a doctor, and the only doctor that we ever see in the movie, just adds to how desperate and hopeless this village seems to be. You'll ask yourself how a child would survive a world like this. How does a child that requires as much attention as possible live in a world that is so empty when she's already going through so much neglect and emotional abuse? There's a reason why this film is shot in black and white and completely comprised of long shots. It's for the sole purpose of making you feel just as soulless and empty as the characters in the film. And it works brilliantly, making the film all the more immersive. Another unique aspect of this film is the way it plays with chronology. The whole film is split into chapters, and there are certain chapters that take place at the same point in time as the previous one, but from a different perspective. This is nothing new when it comes to films, but what's meta about it here is how it functions like a tango, going 6 steps forward and 6 steps back for the sake of slowly but surely giving you the greater picture over a long period of time. One of my favorite parts of this film was the dance sequence. In this 10-minute shot of the film, we see that the only way that these people can be happy in this village is by completely drinking away their feelings and losing control of themselves. One notable thing about this scene is that it was completely improvised by the actors. According to Béla Tarr, he actually got the actors drunk for the sake of making the scene authentic. And I believe him. Throughout the scene, you totally feel the energy of these characters. There is a lot to appreciate about this movie, and most of what I saw was a recipe for a 5 out of 5 movie for me. There's just a few problems that I feel I need to bring up. Now, if you've seen my video on Milo and Otis and know anything about this movie in relation to animals, you're probably wondering what I think of that one scene with the cat. First of all, from an objective standpoint, this part of the film is still a lot more ethical than anything in Milo and Otis. But I'd be lying if I said this shit didn't make me uncomfortable. But in all fairness, this is an accurate portrayal of what a child does when going through neglect, and most of the animal cruelty here is more akin to a kid not knowing how to play with a cat without being too rough. And anything going further than that was apparently simulated via a sleeping injection that vets use during surgery. I don't know, I'm still not sure if I would call this ethical, but when you've seen a pug get mauled by a bear multiple times, it kinda puts these sort of things in perspective. I'll link to an article of Béla Tarr explaining himself so you can decide on your own. Also, without giving too much away, there's a scene where a character dies and we have to see their funeral, and because the shot is focused on the corpse for so long, we can see the body blink its eyes a few times. Come on bro, all you had to do was tell them to keep their eyes closed for 10 minutes. Oh, and one more thing. You know that stock wind sound effect that you hear in every other piece of media when it seems like they can't afford to make their own sound effects? Yeah, you hear that a lot in this movie. So yeah, despite some of my complaints, I can definitely see why this film is hailed as a masterpiece. 7.5 hours definitely seems like a lot, but the 2 intermissions make it very easy to pace yourself for a multiple day viewing like a miniseries. But if you choose to watch it on Vimeo, they give you exactly 3 days to watch it, so do not wait any longer to finish the film or you'll have to rent it all over again. If you have any convenient way of watching this movie, and you think you've got the patience for it, go check it out. Sátántangó is a rare gem of a film that is worth watching at least once in your lifetime. A 4 out of 5. But those are just my first impressions. If you like what I had to say or how I said it and you want to see something with a little more thought put into it, then I would recommend checking out one of the 2 videos listed on screen. And if you really like what you see, then of course, subscribe and ring the bell. And be sure to be on the lookout for my next long-form video, which will be revisiting V for Vendetta in the year 2020.